Hello, everybody. It's nice to see so many of you. Well, not most of you are on video, but it's good to see the ones that are on video. Welcome to this night of LLHS, where we will be hearing from Chrissy on security research and from Bibi at Metasploit lab. So, as you know, this session will be recorded and it will later be posted on social media. And we will use all the facilities of Zoom tonight. So for all your questions, please post them in the chat channel and prefix them with a Q so that it's easier to understand their question. And all the questions will be, we will try to get to them at the end of each session. So welcome to LLHS. If this is your first time, welcome. We are a bunch of women, mostly women, we're not exclusive, who try to help each other to get more technical and understand how hacking works so that we can defend better as well. We're all trying to get better at security. Some of us are new in security, some of us are trying to get into security, some of us trying to change careers within security, so we're all helping each other. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Chrissy Morgan, and I will let her talk about herself and continue to talk. Over to you, Chrissy.
Brilliant, thanks, Dee. So hi, I'm Chrissy Morgan, and today I'm going to be speaking about starting out in security research. And I'm just going to turn off my camera quick because it's really distracting being able to see myself, so it's a little bit better. Now I can get comfortable and slouch over my desk. So first up, what is this talk about? It's going to be a little bit about me. I don't really want to be banging on about me, but hopefully, especially the guys who are looking into getting into this stuff, hopefully just show them the path that I've taken and maybe inspire. I'll be going over how you can get started, maybe give you some resources and some of my experience from that, and also some of the research that I've undertaken, and I'll be showing you how I've practically applied those resources. I'll show you. Okay, so first up, here's me. I was about 9 years old. I was a huge hyperactive nerd, and my mum bought me my first ever laptop, and that was essentially to keep me quiet, and it worked. The thing was great. It had a inbuilt mechanism where you had loads of games and spelling stuff and everything, but it also had something really interesting, which was you could program your own games in sorry. Sorry,
can everyone go on mute?
Cool. So yeah, so basically what you could do is you could program your own games and stuff in basic programming language, and that was awesome for me. So yeah, it did work. It did shut me up. I cracked on with it. Now, I started off in doing security research only the last couple of years, really. I feel like I've actually forged a path forward for myself. But I did start out in help desk about 20 years ago, and I've just recently stepped down as a CISO, so I could actually pursue my career forwards in security research, because it's actually what I love to do. I've presented talks on stuff that I've done. I've also done workshops, and you'll see some of the usual suspects there in the photo. That was when we did the RFID hacking tools workshop, and Major Malfunction kindly came along and gave a really good session on things. But as I said before, it is my sort of like passion. One of my drivers is my kids that I have. I have 2 teenagers, and they're amazing. They're also little fellow hackers.
7-0.
Another thing that I found with this actual following this path is that I've actually managed to do an awful lot of cool stuff. So I managed to go out to Vegas a couple of times. I got to meet like Guru, Major Malfunction, and also some of the guys at the HackerOne events that I've taken part in. That's Cody, Ben, and Stock, and they're really good guys to follow on Twitter if you're into like web application hacking and that. And that annoying kid is still annoying, but I probably make my mum proud now because I'm like the current poster girl for HackerOne. I have no idea why. I'm still a pain in the butt to them guys even now. But yeah, I'm there. Fun fact with those lot, I actually managed to get them to U-turn a private chartered boat once on the River Thames. And that's purely because I have got no concept of time or direction, so they had to come and pick me up. But that was one of the events. Anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about researchers and who they are. So you don't need to be employed as a security researcher to undertake security research. You can do it in your spare time, you know, do it as part of your actual normal day-to-day job. But some of the attributes and traits that you'd have would be, you'd be inquisitive. You'd do this by nature. You'd always be trying to figure out stuff, and you need to be a little bit passionate about it, because there's a lot of this stuff that is quite hard, and you need to really dive in and have that passion to drive you forwards. With me, if there's a system in place that I don't like, I will always try and find a way around it, because I'm a bit of a problem solver, and I guess that's a kind of common attribute as well. But some of the things that they will be actively seeking out is novel and new vulnerabilities, such as finding 0 days. And I haven't really quite got into that level of things just yet. I found a few issues in web apps and stuff, but not so much on the hardware just yet. And they will study tactics, techniques, and procedures. Now, I once found a piece of malware which I found on an old server of ours at work, and I was like, oh, okay, that looks cool. Not seen anything like that before. Put it to the side for a couple of weeks, and then I had the chance to have a look into it over one weekend. It turned out to be a really cool obfuscated bit of PHP-based malware. And after doing some research into it, I found out that it could actually be attributed back to an APT group. And I learned how they were going out and they were targeting industrial and engineering sectors. But as part of this crossfire, much smaller firms were falling victim like us, including this cattery that I'd found that had been exploited also. I mean, like, come on guys, who hacks cats, right? Not nice. But yeah, if you're into sort of like malware reverse engineering and web stuff, I've got a little write-up on the investigation that I took part, and if it's something that you want to actually look into, on my blog I've got the steps to take on how you would deobfuscate that malware as well. There's some other resources that you can look at. So Vulners is quite a cool website. It compiles a lot of different resources together with vulnerabilities and puts them all in one website, so you can have a look there. And also Meta.org is quite a good one as well. So it's not just new vulnerabilities that they will look for. They will also look to extend and build upon the work of others, and perhaps come at things a different way. I once took part in research, and it was part of a placement where I was tasked to reverse engineer some steganography tools and find out a way of method of detection. As part of that, just out of interest, I wanted to know how many people were actually looking at steganography and looking to use it within the general population. And as part of that, I had a look on Google, and you can get some like Google Trends and things that are quite interesting. I found that there were 2 huge spikes in the time periods, over the 5-year time periods I was like looking at. And that actually related back to when a TV series on telly was playing and had steganography featured within it. So people have obviously watched that and be like, oh, okay, what's steganography? And then gone and Googled it as well. So that was quite interesting. And I've also written up a bit of a blog on that and about the use cases of steganography and sort of like who would be using it and different factions as well. Whilst I was working within that area, I was also working on another project, and this was around file type detection. So I literally walked past one of my colleagues and saw that he was using BinGlide, and it's an amazing tool. Now, BinGlide is a visual binary analysis tool, which will take a file and then it will give you a visual representation of its makeup. So this is a sound file, and it kind of looks like a bit of a square cube. And then you've got an image file, which is more of a flowy flower. So I thought perhaps we might be able to use this to detect file types rather than look at the header information. and we would see what it looks like with regards to, like, we'd take a picture, or a picture as per se, of this file type, and then we would use AI to visually compare against a central database. This then led me to writing a file type detection mechanism and comparing files based on what they look like, and I ended up presenting the research to government, which was quite cool. But it turns out some pretty smart guys over in the USA were thinking exactly the same thing and like looking into this area also, and they landed quite a fair bit of money to actually look at this research and move it forward and this whole field forward, which is pretty cool. So I never got a chance to really present that in the global sense or anything, but what I would suggest is if you do some research, and what a lot of researchers do, they will go out and present and they'll contribute back into the community. Not just big conferences, but sometimes local meets, then online calls like this as well. And that's just essentially to help pass the information on to others. They'll also post on blogs and social medias, updates, and there is a wealth of information out there where people are trying to spread what they're doing. I have some links here to some people that you might want to follow. They actually really do come up with some interesting stuff. And you never know, you might actually see something that they've produced, and then you might want to extend on that yourself. One person that I haven't actually put on here, and I wish I did, was Meadow Ellis on Twitter. So I've put her Twitter handle and retweeted that on my own Twitter. She's definitely one to follow. I did pass through my slides with her to have a look at some of the diagrams that I've done, because I trust her experience. She constantly puts out some really great stuff. So yeah, check her out as well. So researchers have to go through a thing called disclosure sometimes, and normally this is done to get a positive outcome, but essentially disclosure is a process where you're working through a stage with a vendor on reporting, and then hopefully patching and then resolving what you found. Now, disclosure doesn't always go to plan, and disclosure isn't always for everyone, and not everyone releases their work or their findings. Some people will sell the said research, and others will choose to exploit it, or just put it out there publicly. I've previously done a talk on the subject of disclosure and everything around it, so I've got a link here if you'd like to have a look at it. There's also some links here to some amazing ladies who have really pushed this area forward, not just in getting awareness, but also putting safe harbour in place. So the researchers who are out there doing the work have got some sort of protection, because sometimes it can be a bit ropey on what you can do and how you're going about it. So on that point, where can you research? So there is literally loads of places, but the one thing you do need to keep in mind is generally people do not like you hacking their stuff and telling them there's stuff wrong with it. I mean, no one likes being told their baby is ugly, right? But you will often find that in the terms and conditions that they have will forbid you from researching their product at all. But of course, not everyone reads the T's and C's or even abides by them. But there are some safer places where you can actually carry out research or learn skills in order to do it. And this is where I kind of started out. So there are like CTFs, and you also get bug bounty programs. And you'll probably find that you will get like great rewards for them as well. Or you can build an online profile to say that you've done these things. Now, with each of these areas, because there's more awareness about this stuff now, you'll find that there's more and more CTFs and bug bounty programs within these individual areas, such as web applications, mobile applications, and now the Internet of Things. So it's pretty good, and you've got a wealth of different surface area to attack and to explore. So I would say go out, explore all the places, but just don't break the law, right? But saying that, you found an area that you want to explore further. How can you go about it? So you can build on the work of others. There's nothing wrong with replicating what other people have done. It's really a good idea and a good place to start. So I generally Google around a product and find out if anyone has done any previous work in that area. And this can really help build an understanding and also shorten the learning curve. I'll take a look at CVE databases, which is like a list of vulnerabilities for that product. And ExploitDB is really good in this regard, because it's going to have not only just the vulnerabilities, but it may also host the vulnerable app, so you can download it, a proof of concept, and then you can also go and search for similar systems. Now, I would be personally lost without blog posts. These walkthroughs are, essential for me. And also it's a good time saving measure, because sometimes you won't have the time to watch a full talk, and just skimming through these notes until you find the answer that you need is always really handy. So you can actually go out and find things as well. So you can find some interesting finds on Shodan. It's a website which is crawled, and it's documenting the services running on the internet connected devices. And you can find some really shocking stuff on there. People have found like baby monitors. There's been systems that have been controlling heating controls, and some really weird stuff as well. So yeah, it's worth a look, but just be careful when you're doing it and learn around how to use it and what you're doing when you're doing it. Of course, there's conferences and there's talks, and especially talks presented at places like DEF CON, and the villages that are there. You'll find there's quite a lot of stuff that's being dropped that's new there every year. But I also find that there's really good quality talks at B-Sides and Hardware IO, and these are the type of cons that you can just turn up to and you can talk to people and you can just really learn from others. I mean, essentially that's how I've learned, is through others as well. So people are actually a really good resource. So what if you want to undertake your own research? Once again, Google is your oracle. I will normally start out looking for manufacturer manuals, as I'll have all the technical specifications and sometimes even the default credentials. If it has a wireless interface, the FCC website is a goldmine of information. I've put the link in the end slides as well for that. Because it's not the main FCC website I find useful. There's another one that you can use that trolls the information. You get some really good stuff like technical drawings, the history of the product, and the technical specifications. Now, I'll give some examples later, but looking at networking, you can use tools like Wireshark and Burp Suite, and then you can discover other things like insecure protocols being used as well. Something I've also had a real interest for, and it's something I'm kind of trying to work towards, has been reverse engineering and just playing around with firmware. So that's like anything from like looking at static code for things such as hard-coded credentials, back to seeing what vulnerable services are running on the box itself. Now, when doing this, there might actually be restrictions in place. So when you're working on embedded Linux devices, you'll sometimes see that it's running BusyBox. Now this is a combined application of Unix utilities, and it runs as a small executable on the system, and that's because some of these devices don't have much to them at all, so they have to really limit down what's available. But you'll also find that it's been stripped down so much you won't have all the available commands that you used to, so that can make things inherently harder. So hopefully give you a little bit of information now about how I got started in RFID, which was one of the first areas that I was researching. And, if I can do it, you totally can. It's just a matter of just getting on with it. So around 2 years ago, the only way that I knew I was going to understand like the magical moonbeam science behind RFID was to literally get hands-on. So I ordered a bunch of stuff online. I then was adamant that weekend I wanted to do something. So I then paid a visit to Homebase, as I wanted to create my own RFID tag. So with nothing in stock at all, I ended up buying random stuff like slug tape, which is going to then replace the copper tape as well. It worked, which is good. So the copper coil would work as the antenna for the tag, and this would then pick up the EM field, and that's produced by my phone. And this would then induce a current. This current would light up a bulb to tell me that it was working. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I had the idea, perhaps I could create a tag which would then be picked up on being read. And with that, it would be able to tell the people that I was working with at the time, who were bodyguards, if they were getting their cards cloned, which would be quite a cool idea. So it's an RFID detector. So skip forward a few months, I've now taken a deep dive into RFID. I've made some great contacts, one of which was Corey Hardin, and he helped me produce some really great boards. He also sent them over he did all the testing and sent them over from the States. And now I've actually got some incredibly cool badges that I've got that are RFID detectors. But I didn't stop there. I saw there were larger cloners that are out there that people use. So previously what you'd have is a RFID reader, one that you would actually use in a sort of office, but they would put it in a satchel bag. So what I wanted to do was reduce down the size. So I bought the smaller reader. Now I was able to fit that into a purse, and thereon came the purse of pawnage. And this would be a handheld version of their device, which would essentially clone tags. Now this was before the RDV4 was released, and that's basically a Proxmark reader that fits into the palm of your hand. But this little project led me on a deep dive to understand readers, and I ended up working on running workshops in the end on how to make them and sort of passing that knowledge on to others. I also got lots of support from the gurus in industry, which was absolutely fantastic. People such as the RFID research group, a major malfunction, which was really cool. I actually brought a tear to my eye because the lads sent me over some boxes of Proxmarks for the workshop that I was running, and on the back of them they've written little messages, and one of them was do me proud, which was so sweet. And funnily enough, the RDV2 that I've got here, which was the first bit of kit that I had, was borrowed to me. And when he lent it to me, I didn't know an awful lot. And that was one of my friends, Mike, and I've still got it now. I haven't given it back, but I didn't have any kit and equipment. So the only thing I could do was borrow things off people. And we had some really good, cool chats about it. And it was nice I had someone having their faith in me, to get me started on it. And now evidently, I'll be going on to do work and tasks with him in the future, which is kind of cool. So that is the RFID. What am I working on now? Some current research is CCTV DVRs. And why? Essentially, because I lost a password. So over Xmas, I decided to get stuck into it with my son, and so essentially hacked the box. But these things are not secure at all. You can find them on eBay, and many people will buy these because they're cheap. They're very accessible. You can get them for less than £100. But what can you actually do with these DVRs? So what I found is I could look at the web panel, I could look at the network traffic, the embedded admin panel. There's a mobile application for it, and a lot of these do have mobile applications now, and also the physical hardware. So first up, the web panel. I normally undertake a level of manual testing, and that's just to get a feel for the applications themselves. And as you can see here, they were super, super helpful. Because they would tell me if a user didn't exist, or if it was a password error, or even if the user had already logged in. But one of the things I noticed with it as well is that it would tell me that I wasn't using appropriate browser. Not that I needed to update, but I needed to use a very old one in order to get it working. So I pulled out Internet Explorer to have a better look. And what I could see was that it was asking me to download an exe, which would then help me install ActiveX and some other plugins and magic they wanted me to for it to all work properly. Safe to say that was a hard pass. I would say, however, it is worth reviewing the source code and the pages that you're looking at. And that's just because you want to see if it's coded well, but also you might find links and other interesting information. So normally when I'm doing this, I'll have Wireshark up and running. Now, Wireshark is a tool which some of you may already know, but it will help you dissect and review network traffic. There are literal books and courses on this, so I won't go into too much depth here. But if you look at the information panes, you will see I was able to get some useful information just to help me get started. I could see it was using a very insecure protocol such as HTTP, and therefore all the traffic being sent across the wire was sent in plain text. I could also see that it was running UC HTTP server. So with that information, I started then going off and Googling it. So I headed over to some CV databases and done a search, and I found a couple of CVs existing for it. One obviously being the non-encrypted communication. And then another one, interestingly, was default with no password. So I put that in default, and what happened was, interesting enough, there was a bit of text in the password box even after I've put over as blank. So I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. I'll take a look at that later. There were also some other interesting things going on. Basically, there was like buffer overflows. The thing that caught my eye was the directory traversal. So what I did is I spun up Burp. Now, this worked really well. I was able to get root credentials pretty much straight away. Now, Burp Suite is a web application testing tool. It is something I know you girls have had a look at recently, but basically it's really handy for stuff like CTFs, bug bounties, and general web app testing. So yeah, take a look at it if you haven't. It's pretty cool. So once I had these root credentials, I was then needing to dehash it. So I headed over and put these credentials into Hashcat. Now, Hashcat will crack hash passwords and password lists that you give it. This time around, it took less than 5 minutes, but it's worth looking into the flags that you can use to set it up to actually cut down that time. So whilst this was running, I decided to go over and Google the creds that I had already. And it was just as well I did, because I came across Toothy's work and his GitHub write-up, and it was pretty good. You know, he had full details on all the different exploits that he's gone ahead and done, and this was primarily on his silicon chip-based DVRs that he was looking in. But these DVRs, what they'll do, they'll all be using the same firmware. So as you can see here, it's applicable across a wide range of makes and models. And that's because they're just all reusing the same stuff. So I'm like, awesome, great. Here it says the user root and the password, and it says I can log in on Telnet port 23 and I can get access, and this is a hard-coded backdoor. And my password that I was working with in Hashcat, that came back exactly the same. So I thought, right, great, I'll give it a go. See, here's the value in actually saving time by seeing what others have done as well. But in my case, I was denied. And I was like, right, okay, I'll go and take a look in Nmap. Now, Nmap is a great tool for seeing what the running services are and also the ports that are on the product. Now, I'm running it here with just a basic Nmap scan, and have also a scan here in Zenmap with UDP. And there's all sorts of fancy stuff that you can do, such as like firewall evasion and techniques that you can do with it. You also need to be careful because it has been known to knock boxes offline and restart products when you are using it. So have a little look, find out how to use it before you go ahead and do. It also comes in a Windows flavor called Zenmap. And you can see from the output here that there was actually no port 23 enabled. So despite my DVR being vulnerable, and despite it being a vulnerable make and model, and having a step-by-step guide documenting its exploitability, it seemed to be in that moment that I had purchased the only DVR on Amazon that didn't want to be hacked. So I decided I'd take a look back at the directory traversal bug. Now, there were two areas on the system. One was called account 1 and account 2. Now, account 2 is a backup credential account, and account 1 is where this is overwritten for new users. Now, I know this because I found my own credentials in there. However, it wasn't my password. It was showing some sort of random hash value I didn't know. So me and my son set about figuring this out. Another thing that I like to show you is, remember from earlier on with the Wireshark output that I found? Now that matched exactly the same output as we were getting when we were running this concept code. Now there was a concept code that was given on Toothy's blog, and basically this was the hashing function that the DVR was using. So I thought that, okay, that's quite interesting, but I can't really do much with that. So what we set about and actually did was we created a rainbow table. So we just chuck in passwords list into another set of code, and that was passing it through the hash, and it was bringing out hashes that we could then try again or just see if there was any matches at all. But I just started hitting brick walls again. It was really starting to get a bit annoying. But as with anything, you just keep going and keep trying. We managed to actually use one of the hash passwords in the RTSP stream. So I actually managed to get the cameras up, and that was wicked. You know, I was super happy. Okay, cool. I've got the DVR working. I can actually use the camera now. Not like I really want to because it's vulnerable. But we actually managed to get something from it. So it's cool. I could see my cameras, and also I could probably see everyone else's who have got this. And there's over 300,000 results on Shodan. I mean, I didn't, because that's like a really bad thing to do. And so, yeah, you can find a lot of stuff there out online already. I kind of decided to step away at this point, and I decided to do some research within the embedded Linux system. So I downloaded the DVR firmware and started to take a look at what it was made up of. Now, you can sometimes grab the images using Binwalk and then emulate these images in Buildroot. Unfortunately for me, it was quite problematic, as the firmware looks for certain types of hardware features, and it's looking for this hardware to be available for it to then carry on the initialization phase and start up and run. So what I've done now is I've started a project where I'm sort of like reproducing the firmware and building my own operating system around it with the BusyBox apps and the file system, which should be quite cool. However, if you are interested in this sort of stuff, really advise that you head over to Samil Shah's labs. He does some really great walkthroughs. He also has a lot of emulated devices already online that you can have a play with, which is really cool. I mean, he's an absolute legend, and I love his work to bits, and he does some really, really cool stuff. And after some chats with him, I realized that he's actually working on something very similar at the moment. He's trying to emulate DVRs, but he's getting the same sort of problems. But, you know, there's people out there who are trying to progress this forward and do things with it. So it's really cool. So go and check out his stuff. So moving forward, what has happened since to improve? So I went out, bought a new DVR box, and I started to take a look again. And I can see that they've actually patched the directory traversal bug, as well as some other things. But what's more interesting, what's actually got worse? And I wanted to leave this on a bit of a happy ending. Turns out someone was looking at this same stuff as me at the same time, and then they actually achieved a sick exploit. Remember that port 23 which was closed? Well, this exploit would just pop it right open. Now, the media jumped on this and said it was down to his silicon chips, but it wasn't. It was actually down to the firmware. And this is just a really good example of where there are clearly exploits out there for a product, it's vulnerable, but still people are drawn to it and going to work on it, and they just pushed it forward a little bit further. So I'm going to finish up here now with some top tips very quickly. First off, I would say, which is really important, is get a good community behind you and around you, because some days it can really feel like you're banging your head off a desk at times, but there are loads of people who are happy to help. And you can catch me online. Here are some of the community groups that I frequent, and these are invite links, so you can always catch me on Discord. And there are times also where you can't get help. You can't talk to anyone due to NDAs, or just don't know who to ask. And one of the things that I soon realized about research is that it can be real lonely work. And it's hard because no one ever truly gets you or what you do unless they've done it before. So you need to grow a thick skin and be independent, especially if you're single. I mean, maybe one day I'll find a guy who's into the same stuff as me, but I'm the type of girl who has been dumped before for spending too much time on a CTF. And for the record, I won that CTF. But so yeah, get a thick skin, be independent. Attribution, really important. Say thank you, stay humble, but be proud of your own achievements. You know, where possible, give shout outs on people's work that you've used, or just respect. You know, get your stuff out there. And it's interesting because there's a kind of like a crossover where before you're doing this and you get random people contacting you on Twitter and sending you weird stuff, to now I just get people contacting me on Twitter asking me how to hack stuff and teach them, which is kind of cool in a way. So there are loads of people who I could say shout outs to, but you know, I'd be here all night. And those guys, I just want to say thank you when they are watching this. So next up, schedule time. do it. If you can schedule a Saturday or a Sunday or an evening that's specific for doing research and you're going to dedicate that, do it if you can, and stick to it as much as possible, because otherwise the washing up doesn't get done, or the housework. Believe me, I know. I'm one to fall down the rabbit hole on this stuff. Take notes, take detailed notes. Oh my God, so important. I come back a month later from not doing anything and I look at my stuff and I'm like, what the hell have I been doing? Now there's stuff like Cherry Tree, Joplin, or even just a Word document. I've got an old school leather bound like notepad that I just write in, and I take it to bed with me, and when I have thought about something, I just like brain dump it in there. Next up, patience. You will need a lot of this, especially when you're going through the disclosure process, especially with people and vendors and your own learning. You know, I went away and I came back when somebody else had did a little bit more on it, and that enabled me to then go further. You need to communicate with others. It's really, really important. It's good to have a mechanism and a community where you can rant to. I don't necessarily mean Twitter rants, but you know, people who understand what you're trying to do and know where you're coming from, because that can massively help. And self-care, you know, it's very easy to fall into a pattern of sitting at your desk, smoking, eating bad food and not seeing the sun. So eat, sleep and exercise as much as you can do, and that will overall help you get through the tough times as well. And finally, celebrate the wins. Mega important, and believe in yourself. Like I said before, if I can do it, you can certainly can. And to finish off on the only way I know how to do it in a meme form, the secret to doing anything is believing that you can do it. Now, anything you believe you can do strong enough, you can do as well. I'll finish up. Here's those links that I was talking about earlier. I will actually make these slides available and downloadable for everyone to take a look at. But if anyone's got any questions or anything, you can always contact me on Twitter or also via my website. But that's everything from me. Thank you.
Woo!
Now I can breathe.
Thank you, Chrissy.
Thank you so much.
No probs.
That was absolutely brilliant. So we've got a few questions in the chat that are quite interesting. I think the first one that I've seen is around the ethics of research. Hang on, that's just moved. It's not coming back in. What are the ethics in research, especially with an NDA involved? Have you ever had any challenges there?
Yeah, so I found a bunch of stuff with Microsoft, and I had to keep that quiet for like 9 months. It was ridiculous because the whole time I was trying to push it through, try and get someone to do something about it. In the end, they didn't. And funnily enough, one of the researchers actually contacted me and they said, look, just do a talk on it because people need to know about this stuff, because they weren't going to change it. Do you know what I mean? There's certain circumstances where you need to be vocal about things, and then there's certain circumstances where you need to think, hang on a minute, okay, well, this would not be a good idea if I released it publicly. So yeah, the ethics do come in. I try and stay as ethical as possible though.
Do you have a good chat with people about that in terms of, you know, because some of it's grey lines, isn't it? It's a little bit of a grey area sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's where the community comes in. If you know other researchers, you can get their advice, you can speak to them about this sort of stuff. Obviously, you don't have to go into details, but they could, you know, possibly have experienced stuff. When I first found this, you know, I stumbled across a load of stuff that I found. I was sat at work and I was like, oh, hang on a minute, that doesn't look quite right. And then I went down the rabbit hole with it. And then the next thing I know, I found that you can pretty much get SharePoint for free. And I was trying to report it to them and they just didn't want to know. So I'm like, fine, all right. But I didn't want to tell anyone. I didn't know who to tell or what to tell. So it comes with experience. And I guess if you're watching other people's talks, if you are interested in that sort of stuff, I do go into it to a good extent in the talk that I did, The Good, the Bad and the Ugly on responsible disclosure. But Katie, Chloe and Amit, they've done some amazing work in that area also.
Fabulous. Thanks very much. So all the vulnerabilities that you managed to exploit with the DVR, did you report that as well?
So basically, because there's existing CVEs there, that's telling me that they've already been reported to someone.
Okay.
So what happens is that you'll approach the vendor. I mean, the guy in that circumstance, I don't think he actually bothered, but the normal course of action is you'll report it to the vendor, and you'll possibly, you know, go through the whole CVE process as well with it. So I didn't find anything just yet that's anything interesting, but I think just even replicating people's work hones your skills down. You learn so much as well.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. That's absolutely brilliant. The Zoom chat is just brimming with love for you, Chrissy. So thank you very much. It's been really cool chatting to you tonight.
Thank you.
I'll pass back to Didi.
Thank you. And Chrissy needs to make me host again.
The power.
And Chrissy will be sharing the document either with us or with you guys directly on Slack. It will be there in the.
Yep, I'll sort that out now, and I'll share a Google link in the group chat, so it's there.
So thank you so much, and
my pleasure.
I hope you have time to join us at the Metasploit one as well, Chrissy, because I do want to take like a group picture at the end of the lab, so that
yeah, sure.
We'll go on video and we can take a picture, but that's for later.
Yeah.
So before I hand over to Bibi, I think I will just paste the link on how to register to Immersive Labs, because that's the platform we're going to use for the lab. If you haven't been with us a long time, or if you just forgot the link, here is the link. Sorry, I posted privately to just one of you. Now I will post it publicly to everyone. Cool. So that's the link. Please register using the code in the chat window. And once you're there, let me share my screen so that, because this platform can get a bit tricky sometimes. It's hard to find the labs themselves. So I'm gonna hit sign in, but you can register if you haven't. Then we're gonna click labs and do a search for Metasploit. And it is the second one, MSF console exploit. And that is the one we're gonna do tonight. And I think before I hand over to Bibi, we can take a very, very quick break, couple minutes, maybe 3 minutes, refresh your drinks, grab some snacks, or just try to get online with the platform. And we'll see you in 2-3 minutes. And if there's any questions, please, you can unmute yourself and ask them. Don't worry.
By the way, when we start, if anyone has any questions, just ask them as and when. You know, this is a lab. So if you get stuck, no shame in saying that you're stuck.
I will make you host, Bibi.
Thank you. I was waiting for that. Awesome.
Welcome back. Bibi is the host now, and she will run us through the lab. I'm looking forward to it.
Hi everyone. So for those of you who don't know me, I've been a member of LLHS before I even started working in security. So I have been a member for quite a while. I know some of you already, and now it's my turn to pass on the baton. So what we're going to be talking about here today is a tool called, several tools in a framework called Metasploit, hence Metasploit framework. And what this tool is kind of used for is exploitation and payloads and searching for basically exploits. And there's loads of other tools that also do this, but Metasploit has one of the largest databases for the exploits and imports them directly into a library on your machine. And if you have Kali Linux, it's already pre-installed. You just have to update the database, and then hooray, you've got all the update exploits that are out there. So I guess there's loads of things that we're going to go over today. We are not going to go through setting up Metasploit. There's a separate lab for that. But I thought I'd get down to nitty gritty and let you guys have some fun with actually exploiting something. So one thing for note that the lab does get continually changed. So if you can make sure, because there were some bugs earlier that have gotten fixed now. If you started the lab earlier when I sent out the link, if you could just restart the lab. So end it and then join it again to make sure you have the most up-to-date exploits and all the settings that are required in that virtual machine. But as you can see, I've already done this one, but I'm going to go through this with you now. Are there any questions so far? Just go ahead and speak up. Nope. Okay.
Hello, hi.
Yeah.
Rainy, first time here. Thank you. How do I join the lab? I've joined Immersive Labs, but I don't know how to join this specific lab.
So what you can do is,
I'll send a link.
Go into labs over here. What we can do is there's two ways of trying to find it, and that is either going in the search bar and typing in Metasploit, or what you can do is go on Tools over here, and if you scroll down, you should see this logo over here with a giant M on it, and that's the one you want to click, and that's Metasploit there. And there's several labs in them. So there's MS Venom, MSF Console, and more MSF Console, but more specific stuff. But the one we're going to be working on today is MSF Console Exploit. So we're actually going to be exploiting a WordPress website. Okay, has everyone managed to get to this point?
I'm going to drop a link to a video in the chat that we did to log in to the Immersive Labs, okay?
Awesome. Okay, great. So I'm just going to go ahead and click into that, and I'm just going to restart it. Okay, now it's just loading.
Just saying I joined, thank you.
Awesome, that's great. Thanks for letting me know. All right, so MSF Console is a particular tool. It's a command line tool, which means you type in the commands and you do everything that you need to do by just typing in text. So there's no clicking or anything like that. And what it's used for searching for exploits. It's for searching through auxiliaries, so things you would use to the step before you would want to actually exploit. So maybe things like reconnaissance or enumeration and that kind of stuff. So like guessing passwords is one that I can say. And all these kind of functions actually help you, well, a hacker or a developer who wants to test or whatever you do to actually pen test whatever you're working on. And there's loads of different ways that you can sort of get started with it. There are some labs that teach you how to set it up locally. There is one within Immersive Labs, so like if you find this fun, I would suggest that you go through the rest of them knowing what you know from this. So this lab isn't too difficult, but I'm going to explain it along the way. And if people are stuck, please just make sure you let me know and tell me what's going on. And you know, who knows, someone else might also be stuck and it might also help them. So one of the first things we want to do is sort of see what the objectives of this lab is. So I'm not going to read the entire thing, but what we've got in, let's look at the tasks. Our goals are to run MSF console, identify the correct exploit to use against the target, and exploit the WordPress site with the credentials provided, and identify the token. If we go through to info, I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes to quickly read through this, and then I'll start going through it, and then we'll do a walk along. And at the end, I'll give you some time to try do the final bit by yourselves. And if you are able to, first one that finishes, you won't get any prizes, but I'll be very impressed. Okay, so the interesting bit over here is that if you watch this video over here, I'm going to play it here. It's actually very, very useful and walks through it bit by bit, although it is a GIF, so it moves pretty fast. But if you do get stuck, please use this for guidance later down the line, but please don't use it to cheat either. And also at the bottom, what we've got, and this is very important, we've got the credentials that we need to log into the WordPress site. So both username and admin are, username and password are admin. Obviously in real life, it would be very hard to get that level of, I guess, stupidity to name them both the same thing. But in this case, it's just to teach you how to exploit something, not how to set proper passwords and usernames. So we're going to go ahead, and I'm going to start by showing you how the WordPress site looks like, because I think it helps to visualize what it actually looks like. So I'm just going to open Chromium browser, or you can use Firefox, and that should already be installed. I'm not sure that Firefox is installed, so if it's not, then just use Chromium. But what we're going to do is just click on the network bar right over here, and now you can see what entities we have to work with. So this will help you visualize where I am and where the target is. So I'm the box that says Cali, and this is my internal IP address. And the way you can tell if something's internal, if it starts with a 10 dot, and if it's external, it might start with something like 192 or 179 and a whole bunch of other numbers. And we can also see that our target is in the same, basically in the same network as us, because they've got the same internal network as us, because they've got the same IP address, this prefix, and the last two are different. We're not going to go too much into networking since we don't need to right now, but just to know where we're going, we're just going to copy this, and we're going to paste it. And for if anyone is having trouble with copying and pasting, it's Control V in Chrome, and when you paste in Terminal is Control Shift V.
Ma'am.
So this is the website. Let me just close this down, and then we can see this a lot bigger. So this is what we're trying to hack. Basically, we're breaking into a bakery, right? I don't know why we would break into a bakery, maybe to get free bread. I don't know, but still, this is where we're going to go ahead. And it's often that small businesses are targeted more than larger ones, simply because they are easier. And as you can see, this bakery sets that the password as admin, so it should be fairly easy. So what we're going to do is actually we're just going to double check that the credentials work. So we're just going to type in admin and then admin. We're going to log in. Okay, cool. So the credentials work because now we're in the admin dashboard over here. We can change the website, we can mess around with it, whatever we want, but that's not the point. So we've got, we're logged in right now, and that's useful, but that's all we need it for. So I'm just going to close this once it stops spinning. Okay, there we go. Now we're going to get up our shell. So one of the first things we want to do when we're in our shell is after it unfreezes. Okay, has it caught up? I think it's caught up. Okay, yeah. Okay, so the Metasploit database is a Postgres database, and that's literally just the type of database it is and the tool that's used to serve it. So we need to actually start the service, the Postgres service, so that we can use the database. So one of the first things that we'll start off with is let's try just typing in MS. First, wait. Whoops. So, and now it's loading. And as you can see, sometimes they'll have a couple of errors there. And that's not good. So what we want to do is we just want to exit this and start the Postgres server. And how we would do that is typing in service Postgres QL start. Then we're going to click start, and when it will press enter, and if it starts, it will say starting PostgreSQL database server main. Okay, and at this point, I just want to make sure if everyone's okay here.
You guys can use reactions to say.
Yeah, please.
If we didn't get an error and it just loaded, is that we don't need to do the post command, do we? The service command, sorry.
You should only do it if it says warning database support here. So if that happens, then you would want to run that, and you'll still get that error after, but like this it fixes some things but not everything. So if I go and start the server, that means that I've started the server, and one of the things that when you're setting up the MS-Conf, that you would actually do something else. So MSFDB init. So this is normally something that you would do when you are setting it up yourself. The reason I say this is because it's important to do this before you even start, because you need to initialize the database that has all the exploits on it and all the vulnerabilities on it. So we want to just run that, and what you can see is if it says already this, you don't need to do anything else. You can literally just go ahead and just type in MSF console. So it's already configured and you can just go ahead and start. So now we're just going to run it again. And we've got the big logo. We've not got any huge errors like we had before. So if you get this, then what you want to do is make sure that you run the server and make sure you also initialize the database. And next thing we're going to do, so I don't know if you've noticed, but right now we're in what you call a shell. So we're inside a different command line interface, and we need to, it just makes our lives easier when we type. So otherwise we would have to type in MSF5 and then whatever command after that, but we don't have to do that here. And this is what we would call a sandboxed environment, so that we can mess around with the exploits but not do any harm to our own machine. It's in its own little contained virtual environment on your computer, or in this case in another virtual environment in the Immersive Labs. So let's go back and have a look at the goals. So if you go into tasks, what we can look at.
Sorry, Bibi.
Yeah.
What was the last command that you just put in there? I'm sorry.
Let's scroll back up. So I've put in MSF console.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
So we've done step 1. That's awesome. Okay, let's have a look at the questions. Is there something that we can answer straight away? What does our host stand for? At the moment, we can't answer that yet. So we're going to move on and have a look at the target itself. So we've got the target's IP address over here, and now we're just going to run a quick OS discovery using Nmap. This is just to see what's there, and we can also going to quickly demonstrate the WordPress scanner just to show you that there are multiple ways of scanning, and it will give us different information to help us pick an exploit. But before we pick an exploit, we need to decide what do we want from the exploit. So what does this exploit have to give us in terms of its payload? What is our goal? So the end goal is, if we go back and we can search down, and we can say in this lab. In this lab, you need to pop the interpreter shell on the WordPress target. So what that basically means is that we want to open our own little console, so one of these, in the target's window, in the target's host. So if we go back here, currently we are here, right? We want to be here, and we want to be able to get and maneuver from the target to potentially go after other hosts, or to pivot to other machines or firewalls and disable things and mess around with configuration. And this is the step into getting into that place. So we want to be able to basically remotely execute code or remotely execute commands. And this is the goal that we want out of this payload, to be able to gain access and to be able to run commands. We won't be able to run every single command that is out there, but it might just be the basics. So we understand what we want from the exploit. Now we're just going to have a look and do a scan. So I'm going to run Nmap. I'm also going to do O for OS discovery, and that's a capital O. And this will help you understand, so you can have a quick Google and look at what vulnerabilities there are for this particular virtual host that is on this IP address here. And so we're going to just put in the IP address now, and I'm just going to type that in. So 10.102.2.55. And that's going to take a little while to run. At this point, does anyone have any questions?
What does -O mean?
-O means OS discovery. So we're looking to find out the operating system of the target. So this would normally be a step in reconnaissance to be able to decide what exploit you want to use, so you make an informed choice. And generally, it's a lot less noisier to know what you're attacking than it is basically assuming everything is in your scope, and you can then just focus on the one thing that you want to exploit, or is the easiest to exploit. So we've run this now, and you can see there's a whole lot of mess over here. This is just problems with encoding. So, but what you can see is that there is some plain text over here. And by plain text, I mean like human readable. So what you'll see is that this system architecture is x86 or 64. And it's a PC, and it's of Linux, and it's based on GNU, so GNOME, and it's not based on Debian. So what we but newer versions of Debian will have GNOME, but at the moment we're just going to assume that it doesn't. So right now we've got that information. What else? What other information do we have? So we can also see what basically load balancer and cluster that this actual virtual host is on. And so it's based in the EU and the west of Europe as well. And we can also see the internal IP address, just in case you haven't already got it. Or if you use copy and paste it, that's there. But we can also see a very cool thing here, and that is we want to know where exactly is our attack surface. So, attack surface is basically how large is your entry point to attempt to exploit something. And right now, we've only really got one. So we've only got 1 point to attack, or 1 point of entry for to be able to attack this WordPress website. And yeah, that's because the only port that's open is TCP. So you're only able to use that protocol. Well, you can use other protocols, but you'd have to use port 80. That's the only port that's open. So the attack surface is very small, very focused. So you should not really be looking at other ports and other protocols. So we know that's HTTP, and we don't have to worry about encryption or SSL because it's HTTP and not HTTPS. So we know whatever that we're going to get, it's going to be in plain text, it's not going to be encrypted, and we won't have to decrypt or de-encode anything. So from here we can sort of move on, okay?
We have a question in the chat. How did we see the machines?
How did we see the machines? So if you click on network at the top here, this is the only active machine that we can see. So that's the target, and here is you, that's your machine, and here is the target machine here. Yeah? Is that okay? I'm going to assume it's okay.
You said yes.
Awesome, great. Okay, so what we're going to do now is that we're going to look at another tool called WPS Scan, and we've used this kind of tool before if you've been to previous labs. I'm just going to open a brand new terminal here because we don't want to mess up the shell. Let's just make this bigger just so everyone can see. So if we type in WPS Scan, and what we should have is that if we want the menu, we just do -- help. And then we have the choices that we want. There are a lot of choices here, but yeah, normally this is a step that you would do earlier. So what we do to use this quickly, to do some, we can actually enumerate some users out of this. So what we do is to enumerate the users, we just look for that how do we set the URL? So I know it's -- URL, and then we type in the URL. So we do http:// and we can just quickly copy over this. Whoops. Okay. So this is what a normal bog standard scan would look like. And this just gives you a bit more information about what potential access points that you can. Now, while I was prepping for this, I did a lot of research into loads of different ways using these methods, but then I was thinking a bit too complicated, and I didn't need to go down that way. So the methods that we actually care about is HTTP, so we can automatically just ignore these over there. And this is another exploit that they have in there, but again, none of these are the ones that we want to use. So if you keep on scrolling, what other information that we get? Well, we can see that there's different pages that we can potentially enumerate. So a page called WP-cron, a readme.html, and what plugins and themes that are in use. And there are quite a few websites that from WordPress that would normally have a vulnerable, the most likely entry point would be through a third-party plugin. And these third-party plugins aren't that regulated because of that reason. So they don't normally have a large amount of funding to be able to run pen tests and check them. And they're open source, so anyone can change anything with them. Nobody really catches up on it. And this is another useful tool if you're using particularly in specific a WordPress site. But now we can enumerate users, and we're going to do -- enumerate. Now this, if we were doing something completely black box, for example, if we did not know the username, this is something that we would do. And to set the user tag, you want to just type in u, and then press enter, and you're going to get similar results as to before. But what we'll eventually get is a list of users. And now you can see under here, users identified, and the only user identified is admin. Okay, so that's the only user identified. There's no other users. You can also run the same check with Nmap as well. Now we're going to move on. So now we understand how to check what user we're attacking, and I'm not going to go through enumerating passwords. We don't need to, because we already know what the password is, and that's going to take time. So now we're just going to go ahead and actually find an exploit. So
we have a question.
Yeah.
What was typed in the last comment?
In the last
command, of course not.
In this one?
Yeah, the last
command. Oh, right. Okay. So just press up. There we go. I'm going to make it bigger.
And another question.
Yeah.
How noisy is this tool? Will the target be able to see that we have run it in their logs?
Yes. There are ways of concealing this, and you can make it less or more verbose if you need to. So OS Discovery is one of the noisiest, and so is this, one of the noisiest forms of recon that you can do. But one of the ways that you would get around this is that you would cycle your IP addresses either within the same range, and it has to be a pretty large range, every couple of seconds or so, and at a random interval. and how many requests get sent out from that particular IP address, just to cover yourself. And that's a lot of work. Some people already do this, and some people use Tor to do this for them. So Tor already manages this kind of stuff for you. So it cycles through five or more different nodes that are all around the world, and they will basically be cycled. The IP addresses will be cycled among them. So using Tor while you're doing this is probably like a given. Otherwise, you're very, very much likely to be discovered and know where you are. And there are some companies that have static IPs. So their IP address does not change to the outside world. And that's particularly dangerous because it means that like it stays completely the same. At home, it changes, right? So when you're at home, your IP address from your router will change every couple of days, depending on what the settings are. And that helps you to an extent, but people can still track down your location as well. So it's still an issue.
So we would use a VPN
yeah, you
as
can
well
use a VPN as well, but VPN's another issue because VPNs can also sell your data, whereas ISPs, it depends who you want to trust more, basically. But there is a VPN that's actually very good. I think it's either Norwegian or Swedish company. I can't remember what it's called. But you just have to send them some money, like in whatever currency, in cash, and they don't even know who you are, your name, or anything like that. And they don't keep any logs or PII. And that's probably one of the best ones you want to go through if you are planning on doing this kind of stuff.
And we can chat about this in the chat room if you guys want to on Slack. There is another question. Is there an NSE script for WordPress vulnerabilities?
Is there a what? Sorry?
An NSE script. I don't know what NSE stands for. I don't know. Josh, you can unmute yourself. Hey.
I can't answer your question if I don't know what you're asking. So,
and my scripting engine.
I think there is. So if I think I saw it earlier. So WordPress Nmap script. Yep. So if you go over here, you can just Google it. So there's loads. I think there's quite a few different ones. So there's not just this one. You can use different ones. Does that answer your question? Just a quick Google. Okay. I guess we can. Is there any more questions, or can I move on?
There is one more.
One more.
This is a quicker one. How do you determine the IP addresses of the target in real life?
In real life. So I'll give you an example. Actually, I'll show you. So we can just basically use and now use NVIDIA. We'll just open a new one. So if you do Nmap and then the URL, so like if we do google.com, then what we can do is actually get an IP address and we can see what like ports are open. I mean, at the moment, we don't have that, but we can also do, we'll use like open, what do you call it? Open source intelligence tools, sorry. And one of the places for that is like Aristotle.
Is everyone on mute? Bibi, is that your background noise?
That is not mine.
Okay, whoever's got screaming kids, can you put yourself on mute, please?
Did you think I had kids?
No.
Yeah.
I was thinking, Jesus, she's babysitting or something.
No.
What did you say, Linda?
Oh, Linda's reconnecting.
Ah.
So I said it's not me for a change. It's usually me.
No, I didn't think it was. It sounds like boys.
Oh, okay.
I heard like, "Roar!"
Someone's pretending to be a dinosaur, I think. So yeah, like I was saying, VirusTotal is another good place to check where the last time that IP addresses were reported in a certain location. So I don't know. Let's pick a more specific website. I just copy your URL. And then I can go to here and just paste it. And then every single time that it's come up, it will be here, and you can go into details, but also the serving IP address. And it will normally be accurate to about 2 or 3 days. But it does take a while, and you aren't completely sure about when the last time this was updated. But I would say that one that doesn't require you opening a tool, use VirusTotal. It won't be there if there are no reports against it. But you know, it does help to figure it out as well, and to authenticate a website. Okay, am I cool to move on? Yep. Okay, so now we are going to figure out which type of exploit that we got. I'm going to show you how we look for exploits in Metasploit. So if I go back to my other shell over here, so we've got the Metasploit shell here. I'm going to open this bigger so everyone can see. And what we want to do right now is just figure that out. So how you would actually set an exploit would be, you'd actually type in just set and then whatever exploit you want. But it's sort of like a path. So if you type in exploit / oh no, it's wrong. It's use, sorry. You're going to use set later. Okay, so exploit, and then we're able to complete now, so that's great. So what we can do is just press enter after exploit, and we'll have a list of exploits here. Okay, and that's great, but that's still quite a lot. So if I type in search, we can look for a search term. So the one that I'm going to search for is shell. And then we can set a type. So let's do type and then colon and then exploit. And this is going to search for all the types of exploits that have the word shell in them. And still it's a pretty big list. So I'm going to look for something, I'm going to grep it, and then we can sort of filter it out. So grep, and then maybe type in WP. And that's not filtered it down that much. So let's keep looking. If anyone stops or sees a WordPress one, shout out, please. Okay, there's a whole bunch of WordPress ones here. And of course, we want the Unix ones because we already identified earlier that it's a Linux machine that's running on. And Unix can be Linux, it can be Mac OS, because they're all based off Unix and they started off with it. So what we want is something that allows us to actually upload a shell. So let's try again with a different search term. So search.
Can you please mute yourselves?
Bibi,
yeah?
I think you can find the person who is unmuted, because you're the host.
All right, I'll find out. Give me a second.
I think it's MK, if you just search the participant in the top.
Yeah.
MK? Don't worry, we're not angry, we're just concerned that you're deaf.
Okay, I've muted it. So
muted it, awesome.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Right, so we want to set something like upload shell. Most of the spaces will be replaced by underscores in this because that's just how the convention is, and it's really annoying if there's a space in a file name. So what we're going to do is just search for that. There's no results there. It's too narrow. Let's look for upload. Okay. And filter again, type. Okay, and now we're searching through them now.
I think Catherine has found one.
Yeah, so we've got a list over here already. So I already know which one it is, but you know, I have to go through the entire process. So if I look through this list, we're looking for something that has the word shell in there. Keep going up.
It's on the bottom of that screen.
Ah, yeah. Awesome. Thank you. This is a test of my eyesight and not my knowledge, I promise. So if this is the one that we want, and we're just gonna sort of copy that and we're gonna give it a go. If it's copied, I hope it's copied. I don't, oh, God damn it. Okay, hang on. Sorry, guys. Yep, there it is. Control Shift C, that's what we want. And that's the exploit that we want, but before we go ahead and press enter, what we want to do is type use and the path of the exploit that we want to use. Now, like, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but over here, this is basically a CVE number. So, but without the CVE in front of it. So if you did want to like correspond it to an actual CVE and look into more of the research or the references that are in there, you can find more information on that on Google or on the MITRE website as well. So we want to do that. And next thing you know, whoa, the little arrow has moved again. So now we've got exploit and we've got the path of the exploit inside of it, so we don't have to keep typing it, right? That would be really annoying. So what we want to do now is actually type, we want to have a look at what options we've got. So how we would do that is we'd type in show and what we want to show. So we can do show commands, I think. Well, here's a list of stuff. So we can do show all encoders, NOPs, exploits, payloads, auxiliary, post, plugins, info, options, and advanced evasion, targets, and actions. So I guess the one that we want to maybe check is info first. Okay, so then we can read up more about this. So we've got the name of the exploit, the path of where it's from, so the module name, the platform. So that's not really correct because that's a language. So it's PHP language. And when you think about this and actually exploit something, what you want to be careful of is knowing whether it's like a privileged user or not. So do you need to already be signed in with either a low-level user or a high-level user to be able to exploit this vulnerability? And the answer is you don't have to be a user at all. But obviously that depends on the actual place that you're going ahead and trying to hack. So if we look further, and we can also see the rank. So by the rank, this also means that it's reputable or not. How often have people said this completely works, or this is quite buggy, the rating will be lower. It's just a reputation of that particular exploit. And we can see that that's particularly excellent. And we've also got the date that it was disclosed as well, so that we can just have a bit of a time frame. And obviously the person who uploaded it. So thanks to that person, and we're just going to go ahead and move on and do this. So let's look at the options. So the options, if you type in show info, will also be at the bottom. So this is the basic options, and we care about this. Also something to check, if your platform's supported, just make sure that it has the available tag, and under available targets, it says the right type of operating system or tool or whatever you're trying to attack. And because it's probably not going to work if you do it on something else. It's like trying to run run something on Mac that's meant for Mac and running it on a Windows machine. It just doesn't work. It's not compiled for Windows, right? So if we go ahead and show the options separately, so I'm gonna do show options. And this is just a list of stuff that we've got here. And as you can see, now we've got some questions that we can probably start to answer here. So if we go back to tasks, so what does our host stand for? Now we can answer a question. So our host is the target host range of a CEDAR range or a host file. Okay, so what we can basically do is we go back to tasks. Which one would you think that is the most closest to that one? I'm going to leave everyone else to answer that, and we'll go through the answers at the end. But that's something that you want to go through and answer there. I close that now. We're going to go ahead now and actually exploit some stuff. So this is the exciting bit. But first thing, we need to actually set the parameters. So how do we set the URL? How do we set the target? So let's set the target, okay? And this is very important to that question as well. So what we type in set to give it a value. And what we want to type in is a parameter exactly how it is over here, and type that in. So our host. And you can see which ones are compulsory for you to add and which ones aren't. Sometimes people will leave their passwords blank. You will not get authenticated with your passwords blank unless the password is actually blank in the database that you're attacking, or there's no authentication whatsoever. And now what we're going to do is actually add our target. So we're going to copy over the IP address, and we're going to plop it down here. So that is not the right thing that I was supposed to copy. I'm just going to type it out before I give myself further embarrassment. So 10.102.2.55. And now if we just press enter, to see that it's been set, you just double check that it's been set to the right thing. If you need to not set it anymore, you just type in unset and the parameter name. So our host and press enter, and then for it to be unset.
We have 10 minutes left.
That's okay, this is going to be a quick one. It'll say unsetting hosts. Now we're going to reset it again. So we've got our host set up. Now what we need is to set up, we need to set the password. So if we type in set password, then we can set that to add, well, let's set a user first. User to admin, and set password to admin again, and then press enter, and those have been set. Another couple of things that you want to double check is that you've got the right port and the target URI. So the target URI is the base of the website. So it's just by itself. So that would be just, for example, if you're going to Immersive Labs, it would just be immersivelabs.online. Everything after that would not be the root of that website. So we want just the domain as it is. And we want to also make sure we're targeting the correct port and that the exploit target is correct as well. So is there anything else that we need to double check that we don't have? Well, we've set everything, or everything that was already preset is on the default that is correct for this particular target. So how do you run a exploit? We just type in run. That's okay. I've done something wrong. I've typed in user. Okay, so I'm gonna unset user and set username to admin.
Question. Can you combine all these commands into one line?
I'm not sure because it's in a shell. So effectively, when you're in a shell, you're prefixing every command with this. So you'd have to really I'm not entirely sure, but you can try it and see what happens. But to be able to chain it, I think you can type in and, or you can pipe it if you want to pass it through another parameter, or you can write it to a file by doing either two arrows right or 1 arrow right, depending on whether that file exists or not. I go ahead and just run it now. And we just want to make sure that if it's going correctly so far, that the authenticated with WordPress will be highlighted green. So that means we've signed in correctly. If that's red, then it's failed and there's something wrong with our credentials and we need to maybe try again. So now this is running. We just have to wait for it to run. It's probably going to be really slow. And okay. So currently it's failed to upload the payload. Let's see what's happening. Okay, I'm just going to restart this and quickly run it. If you get the same problem, you should do the same. Your answers will be saved regardless.
Lorna says, think you typed the username in small letters rather than caps.
Yes, username and password only. You can do it in smaller caps. Right, okay.
We have only a few minutes left, but is everyone okay to run over like 5 minutes?
Yeah, it will only be 5 minutes, hopefully. Okay.
Yep, most people seem to be okay with it.
Awesome. HTTP, no, Unix.
How do they use +225?
Sorry?
How do you use plus? I think someone said in the last thing, if
Yeah.
you use plus number, it will work.
Plus number?
So, yeah, Sonia was saying, instead of writing the full exploit name, you can use the exploit's number.
So this.
Maybe just 225 even. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's worked, I think. No, it hasn't. Let me remind myself what it was. Ah, right, okay, so that.
Guys, when you have some valuable information, you can unmute yourself and just
Please do
say
that. You know, I'm not a complete expert, so please.
I'm sorry, I was having a wee. What do you need?
What do you mean? At what point are you?
Oh no, sorry, I thought you needed something because DD just said to unmute if you had some.
Oh,
never mind,
no.
Ignore me, I'm talking crap.
I'm good, I know what to do, so. But if it breaks again, then I'll probably ask. But this definitely worked earlier. It's just a matter of restarting.
So some of the tips was the number of the exploit might have changed, so that's why you would need another search. Someone else said WP admin shall upload. I think that's the one you were looking for. And someone else says they had to run the exploit a few times, then it worked.
Okay, yeah, no, I had to do the same. I don't know why that is, but sometimes when you restart and run it again, then it works. Sometimes it doesn't. It's really annoying. But what you should have is you should have basically a shell, a Meterpreter shell inside. And hopefully I can get to that point. So I hope it works. I hope everyone's praying for me, because otherwise I'm going to have to run through this again. Oh, yay, awesome, it's worked. So, okay, so now we're in our interpreter shell. Okay, so if I go through the tasks, further down, so we should be at this point already. So we've managed to exploit it, we managed to get a shell on there. So now we have to find this path, and how we would basically do that, if we just go in cd/, we should be, if we look at a list, we should be in the root directory. So what we want to actually get is, we need to go into var. Okay, so we're just going to change directory into var, and then into www.
Why are we doing it?
Because that's where the config file is, where we can get the password.
Yeah.
So what we want is to get the password, and then what we can do is actually put that, get the database password, and once we have the database password, an attacker would maybe exfiltrate that data, or destroy that data, or whatever they choose to do with it. HTML forwards. Okay. Now we're going to put files in there, and we've got quite a few different config files for WordPress right here. So we've got config, content, cron jobs, anything that's included, the loader, login file, the mail. So this is basically effectively the source of WordPress. And as you can see, it's completely clear for us to see. Now, all we want to do right now is we just want to print out what's in the file that we've been given. So just type in wp config.php. And then we've got that file. So let me just make this bigger. That didn't do much, but if we scroll up, we can see that, like, this is how they define a what we call an environment variable. And environment variables could be secret keys. They could be like a whole bunch of things. It could be, how to set up Circle CI, or a whole bunch of stuff. So, and IP addresses, and we can see that here. So we can see over here that they've set encoding to UTF-8. We can set the IP address is set to localhost. So the database host is localhost within that virtual environment that we've just gotten into. And we've got the thing that we've got here. So, and if you notice, the DB user is root. We should never have a DB user that is root. But if we go here, what we can see is that this is the root password of the database. So this is what we want. So we've got the parameter name. So this is a key value pair. So this is the key DB password, and here is the parameter itself. So we're just gonna type that in over here. Password, and then submit, and that should be correct. And if we quickly go through the other questions, so this one should be remote host, because we're connecting to a host that is not something that we own. So it's meant to be outside our network. So right now it's within the same internal network that our device is in, so our Kali box is in. But normally it would be outside, so therefore remote host. Next question, what will the command show payloads mean? So what it will do, it will do one of these two. So if we want to click that one, I think it's this one, it's correct. So we want to display all available payloads for the chosen exploit. So the show command, I don't know if you remember, only works after you've selected the exploit. It won't work or give you the correct information if it's outside of that. So what we want to do is always make sure that if you want to look for help menus, sometimes they're nested within nested functions. So you might want to like go into the particular exploits to have a read of them. And if we keep on going down, the next question was, which of the following commands will execute an exploit on Metasploit? And we all know that one, and it's pretty straightforward. It's just run. And what exploit do we need to run this lab? So what we need is wp admin shell upload, and hit enter, and then that's it. We're done.
Great.
Sorry that we went over 5 minutes, but I hope that was like fairly simple to everyone.
Very good.
If there's any questions, I'll be around in the Slack channel for at least another half an hour or so. And if there's any more questions after that, then I will answer when I can. Just tag at Bibi Sanjarani in Slack or message me, and I'll be happy to do that. So
I want to take a group photo before we dissolve.
Yeah, everyone share your screens. Come on.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop sharing right now.
Bibi, well done. You've done really well, considering the first time you came to our very first meetup, didn't want to speak to anyone, and shy, and then now you're presenting at one of our events. That's part of what Hacking Society is about. It's a really, really lovely thing to see you grow to this. Amazing. Yeah. Well done.
Yeah, and I want everyone to know that they should have the confidence to come up here and like teach what they've learned as well. You don't have to have known things forever to teach something. So I did this lab this morning, just to make sure that I could teach you correctly, right? I didn't. I mean, I've used Metasploit before dozens of times, but like if it was the case that I just you can just learn the lab a couple of days before and you can teach what you've learned within the last couple of days. Nobody's going to shame you for it. Like, this entire process is always constantly about learning. And in the security industry, our entire lives and days are just constantly learning because our landscape is constantly changing. So never be ashamed to say that you don't know something, because that is something that will happen. Not everyone knows everything, and that's the reason why we have people in threat intelligence, i.e. me, hello, who actually find out the bits of information. It's part of your job to be good at being able to problem solve and find information, but you're not in no way ever expected to know everything. And if people expect you to know everything, then don't work there. It's the wrong place for most people. So just be open-minded to yourself and don't beat yourself up. I've done that dozens of times before. It's not great. Yeah, just be open and learn and just live in it and share it with us.
Thank you, Bibi.
Come on, people, open your videos. Sure.
That was awesome, Bibi. Well done. Like such a natural with training, actually. Yeah. Really, really good.
And I loved how we all solved it together. It was great seeing all the help and advice coming through the chat. I love it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like I said, I don't know everything, and I make mistakes all the time. So I wanted everyone to see that I make mistakes all the time, because then you'd be open to sharing your mistakes with me, and that's totally fine. But
I think we've got everybody who's going to put their webcam on, Dee Dee, if you want to take your picture, my love.
Hey, okay, we're getting more pictures, so I'm.
You
5 more seconds.
Wait, if we're getting toys out, can you like give me 2 seconds and I'll bring a plushie and then be right back.
Guys are shy, I think.
Hey, Callie's got a mask on as well.
Got a little melon.
Watermelon. Okay, I am taking it. 3, 2, 1. That's great. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for being patient with me, guys. Enjoy your evening.
Good night, everybody. Thank you, Chrissy. Thanks, Bibi. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Well done, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Ciao.
From undisclosed location. Good night.